In the small town of Mbale, Uganda, Amarachi believed she had found her perfect man. Danjuma was kind, brave, and once even protected her from street thugs. He stood between her and danger, making her feel safe, loved, and special. So when he asked her to marry him, she said yes with all her heart. At first, everything felt like a dream. Danjuma brought her flowers, called her his queen, and promised to always protect her. But slowly, the man she loved began to change. The sweet words turned cold. The soft touches became rough. Instead of love, there were rules. Instead of laughter, there was shouting. He started telling her what to wear, who to talk to, and when to come home. He said it was for her safety, but Amarachi began to feel like a prisoner in her own home. The same man who once fought to protect her was now the one she feared. She couldn't understand how the man who once held her hand so gently could now slam doors and raise his voice. What once felt like love now felt like control. The promises he made at the altar were broken, replaced by sharp commands and harsh silence. Amarachi stayed quiet for a long time, hoping things would change. But deep inside, she knew something had already changed, not in her, but in him. And the man who once protected her had now become her punisher. Amarachi had always been proud of her long, beautiful braids. People often stopped her in the market to ask where she got them done. Women admired her style, and men would smile and say she looked lovely. For Amarachi, her hair wasn't just hair, it was part of her. It made her feel confident, creative, and free. But Danjuma didn't see it that way. At first, he said he liked her hair, but soon his words changed. He started to frown when other men gave her compliments. One day, after a stranger told Amarachi she looked stunning, Danjuma exploded. "You look like you're trying to seduce the whole village," he shouted. Amarachi was shocked and tried to laugh it off. She thought he was just being silly, or maybe he had a bad day. But his eyes didn't smile. They were filled with something dark, something she didn't understand yet. From that day, things became worse. Every time she styled her hair or wore her favorite earrings, Danjuma would find a reason to fight. He accused her of seeking attention, of wanting to be noticed by other men. Amarachi tried to explain that she wasn't doing anything wrong, that looking nice didn't mean she was being unfaithful. But Danjuma didn't want to listen. His jealousy boiled quietly, like hot water in a sealed pot. He didn't see her beauty as something to be proud of, he saw it as something dangerous. A threat to his pride, to his control. Amarachi began to feel nervous whenever she got dressed. She stopped looking in mirrors. She avoided going out unless she had to. Her colorful scarves and beads stayed packed away. Friends noticed she looked tired and sad, but she just smiled and said she was busy. Inside, she felt like she was slowly fading. She missed the woman she used to be, the one who laughed easily and walked with her head high. Danjuma's words had become a cage. And yet, she still believed he loved her. She thought maybe if she just stayed quiet, things would get better. Maybe he would trust her again. But Danjuma's jealousy was not about trust. It was about control. He didn't want to share her with the world. Not even her smile. Not even her light. Amarachi didn't realize it then, but Danjuma wasn't just angry at other men, he was angry that she didn't belong to him fully. Her beauty made her visible, and he wanted her invisible. What scared him most was not her hair, but her confidence. Her glow. And he was ready to do anything to dim it, even if it meant breaking the very thing he claimed to love. Amarachi held on, hoping love could fix what was breaking. But deep down, a quiet voice was starting to whisper. A voice that said, "This is not love. This is fear in disguise." She didn't know it yet, but the day Danjuma shouted about her braids was the day something inside her began to wake up, a quiet strength, waiting for its moment. It was a long day for Amarachi. She had spent hours making a bride look perfect for her wedding. Her hands were tired, but her heart felt full. She loved her work, the way women smiled when they saw themselves in the mirror, the joy of creating beauty with her hands. That night, she came home late, exhausted but happy. She greeted Danjuma with a soft smile, but he barely looked at her. His eyes followed her, cold and quiet. She didn't think much of it. She changed into her nightdress, wrapped her hair loosely, and lay down on the bed. Within minutes, she was fast asleep. But Danjuma didn't sleep. He sat in the dark, staring at her. Not with love, but with rage burning quietly inside him. He remembered the compliments people gave her, the way men looked at her in the market, the proud smile on her face when she talked about her work. To him, it wasn't pride, it was rebellion. He didn't want a wife that shined too bright. He didn't want a woman that other people admired. He wanted control. And tonight, he had made a decision. While Amarachi slept deeply, dreaming of silk veils and happy brides, Danjuma got up and opened a drawer. Inside was a pair of scissors. He walked over to her slowly, holding his breath. Her braids spilled over the pillow like a crown. Gently, carefully, he began to cut. One by one. Snip. 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 The sound was soft, almost like a whisper, but Amarachi stirred. She reached up and touched her head. Something was wrong. She sat up quickly. The pillow was covered in pieces of her hair. Her hands flew to her scalp, and her heart dropped. Her hair was gone. Her braids, the ones she had spent hours caring for, had been chopped off. She turned and saw Danjuma standing behind her, holding the scissors. He didn't even look sorry. In fact, he looked proud. Now no one will stare at you, he said coldly. Amarachi couldn't speak. She felt frozen. A cold breeze touched her head, where her thick hair used to be, and she finally understood. This wasn't just jealousy. This was violence. Tears didn't come right away. She was too shocked to cry. Her heart beat loudly in her chest, and her hands shook as she picked up the fallen braids from the floor. Danjuma had taken something from her, not just her hair, but her voice, her light, her pride. He had done it while she was most vulnerable, most peaceful. He had waited until she felt safe. But in that silence, something inside her shifted. She looked at him one last time and didn't see the man she married. She saw a stranger. A small, scared man who used scissors like a weapon. And while he thought cutting her hair would silence her, he had no idea what he had actually done. He hadn't broken her. He had woken her up. Amarachi stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. Her head was bald. Her beautiful braids, the ones she loved so much, were gone. The woman looking back at her didn't look like the Amarachi she remembered. But strangely, she didn't cry. Not a single tear rolled down her cheek. She felt something deeper than sadness, something solid, like a quiet storm building inside her chest. She touched her bare scalp gently, feeling every inch where the scissors had stolen pieces of her pride. The pain was sharp, but the silence around her was sharper. Behind her, Danjuma chuckled like he had won. Like he had done something clever. Like he had finally taught her a lesson. But Amarachi was done learning his lessons. Without saying a word, she turned away from the mirror. She opened her small bag, the one she used to carry when visiting clients. Inside it, she carefully placed her favorite pair of scissors, the ones she used to make women feel beautiful. She folded a soft scarf, the one her mother had given her, and laid it on top. Then, she took her tailoring certificate, proof of who she was before Danjuma tried to erase her, and gently placed it in the bag. These were not just items. They were pieces of her soul. Her hope. Her identity. She zipped the bag slowly, her hands steady. Danjuma was still in the room, standing there with his cold smile, thinking he had broken her. "Where are you going?" he asked, almost laughing. Amarachi turned to face him, her eyes calm but fierce. She looked him in the face, not with fear, but with clarity. "You've just freed me," she said quietly. Her voice didn't shake. Her hands didn't tremble. And before he could say another word, she walked out. She didn't take anything else. Not her clothes, not her shoes. Just the small bag and her dignity. As she stepped outside, the air felt different. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was fresh, like the beginning of something new. People on the street looked at her bald head, but she didn't lower her eyes. She walked straight, with her back tall and her heart even taller. Every step felt like a goodbye to the life that once held her down. She didn't know exactly where she was going, but she knew she was never going back. The home that once held love had turned into a prison. And now, she had finally unlocked the door. Danjuma had thought cutting her hair would cut her spirit. But all he did was cut the final string that held her back. He didn't break her. He helped her find herself. That night, Amarachi didn't sleep in fear. She slept in peace, not because she had escaped, but because she had chosen freedom. Her journey was just beginning. And even though she had left her old life with only a small bag, she carried something much bigger, her soul, finally safe. Weeks had passed since Amarachi walked out of that house. Each day was hard, but each day she grew stronger. She had stayed with a friend in Enugu, slowly rebuilding her courage. There were moments she felt afraid, moments she questioned herself, but not once did she think of going back. She knew the kind of love Danjuma gave was not love at all. It was fear, control, and pain. So she did what she never thought she could. She went to a lawyer, told her story, and began the process to free herself completely. The court date was set. And as it got closer, Amarachi didn't feel nervous. She felt ready. On the morning of the court hearing, Amarachi stood in front of a mirror again, but this time, it was different. She wasn't staring at a broken woman. She was looking at a warrior. She wore a simple white dress that she had tailored herself. It fit her perfectly, like it was made for this very moment. Her short hair was styled beautifully, framing her face like a crown. She didn't hide it, she owned it. Every scar, every strand, every part of her journey. With her head held high, she walked to the courtroom. Inside, Danjuma waited, dressed in his best clothes, his shoulders high with pride. He was sure Amarachi would come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. He smirked when he saw her enter. But that smirk slowly faded. The woman who walked in wasn't the quiet wife he used to command. She was glowing with power. Calm. Confident. Free. Amarachi didn't even look at him. She walked straight to the front, her heels clicking with purpose. In her hand was a folder, inside it, the documents that would end everything. The judge asked if she was sure. Amarachi nodded without hesitation. Then, with steady hands, she opened the folder and placed the papers before the court. Divorce. Evidence. Her written statement. Photos. Witness names. She had brought everything. Her case was clear. Not only had Danjuma emotionally abused her, but he had also tried to strip her of her identity. The courtroom was silent as she reached for the pen. She didn't blink. She didn't shake. She signed the papers with a hand full of peace and power. Danjuma sat frozen. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. This wasn't the woman he thought would fall apart without him. This wasn't the woman he left bald and broken. This was someone new, someone he couldn't control. Amarachi turned once, looked at him, and gave him the same quiet words she had spoken weeks before, "You freed me." And just like that, she walked out. But this time, she wasn't walking away in silence. She was walking into something new, a life she chose, a future she was building. Not as a victim, but as a survivor. As a queen. Danjuma had taken her hair, tried to take her voice, her strength. But Amarachi had taken everything back, with one powerful signature. Amarachi didn't stop at freedom. She wanted more than just a new beginning, she wanted to build something beautiful out of her pain. After her divorce was finalized, she moved to Kampala with nothing but a small bag, her certificate, and her fire. She started working at a small salon, sweeping floors, washing hair, learning how to run the business from the inside. Every coin she saved went into her dream. Months passed, and slowly, things began to grow. She rented a small space, painted the walls soft gold, and hung a mirror that reached from the floor to the ceiling. On the door, she placed a simple sign, "Crown Again." It wasn't just a salon, it was a home for women who had once been made to feel small. A place where broken hearts could sit in chairs and rise again as queens. Her story spread quickly. Customers would sit in her chair and ask, "Are you the woman whose husband cut her hair?" And she would smile and nod. But now, she was no longer that woman. She had turned the pain into purpose. Women came not only for braids or trims, but for healing. Amarachi listened to their stories while styling their hair. She encouraged them. She gave jobs to young girls who had run from abusive homes. She trained them, fed them, taught them to believe in their own worth. Her hands, once used only for creating beauty, were now building futures. Before long, Crown Again became more than just a salon. It became a movement. Women came from different cities, not just to be styled, but to feel safe. To feel seen. Amarachi didn't just rebuild her life, she created a refuge for others to rebuild theirs too. She held free workshops on self-worth, financial freedom, and survival after trauma. News outlets picked up her story. People shared it online. From wife to warrior, the headlines read. Her name became known not for what had been done to her, but for what she did after. Then one day, Danjuma came. He walked into the salon looking tired, with dust on his shoes and desperation in his eyes. He didn't come with anger, he came with empty hands and a weak smile. "Amarachi," he said, "I've fallen on hard times, could you help me?" He looked around at the salon, the happy workers, the peaceful space. He realized she had built an empire from the ashes he left her in. Amarachi didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply reached under her styling table, pulled out a small mirror, and handed it to him. "Look what you broke," she said softly. He looked into the mirror, not just at his face, but at everything he had lost. His pride. His power. The woman who once stood behind him, now stood far, far ahead. Amarachi turned away and went back to her client. She didn't need revenge. She had something better, a full life. A life where every scar became strength. And every broken piece became part of her crown. In the end, Danjuma didn't just lose a wife. He lost everything he thought made him powerful, his control, his pride, and even his name. People no longer looked at him with respect. They whispered about him, not as a man of strength, but as a man who tried to destroy a woman's light, and failed. The woman he once called weak had become something far greater than he ever imagined. Amarachi didn't just move on, she rose. And she didn't rise with bitterness or hate. She rose with purpose. She became a symbol, not of revenge, but of resurrection. The girl who once cried in silence was now helping women speak. The woman whose hair was cut in the dark now stood in the light, showing others how to find their beauty again. Every braid she styled, every young girl she trained, every story she listened to, it all added to her power. Not the kind that controls others, but the kind that sets people free. Danjuma once thought cutting her hair would cut her spirit. But instead, it cut his own power. Amarachi used that moment, that pain, as the beginning of a new chapter. She turned his cruelty into her crown. And now, she teaches others to do the same. She doesn't tell them how to forget their pain, she shows them how to build from it. Because in the end, Amarachi didn't just take back her voice, she gave others theirs.